And welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am the architect. Concordantly, this is my co-host, the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. You may call him Matt. Matt, that whole sentence was way harder to read out loud than it was to type.
Yeah,
I have much respect for that actor now. Holy
yeah, especially
shit.
considering that was actually pretty much the line.
Yeah, that was it. Matt, how's it going?
It's doing good, Scott. I'm looking forward to talking about this film. I have such a complicated relationship with this film. I'm sure you do too. I think maybe a lot of people do. And
yeah, I think the world has a complicated relationship with this film, and we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of why.
Yeah.
So, of course, we are doing episode number 3 in our ongoing Wachowski marathon, and we're talking about The Matrix Reloaded, Entertainment Weekly's number, I forget what number it was, but they were on the top 25 worst sequels ever. The Matrix Reloaded. I am very excited to talk about this one. It was an interesting watch for me, Matt, and again, like we said with The Matrix itself, we're going to try to frame this discussion around the Wachowski sisters themselves, around who they are as writers and directors, and what this movie, especially as compared to the last 2 movies we've discussed, what we can glean about what type of writers there are, and the one of the things that jumped out at me a lot, and I think we'll get to the specific scene that this occurred to me in this movie, was there are parts of the sequel that felt like it was a different writer or director that didn't understand why that part was good in the first one, but it was the same people.
Right.
and that shocked me.
Yeah. So based on that, I think it would make sense to start the discussion with what do we think they were trying to do?
Okay, let's do
sense
it.
to you?
Yeah, we're just going to get right into this. Let's do it. Let's Matrix Reloaded, go.
Okay.
Cue trailer music.
Here we go. Hiya, fellas.
It's him.
Do we proceed?
Yes.
He is still
Only human.
all of our lives. We have fought this war. Tonight, I believe we can end it.
That's a nice trick.
Upgrades.
Mr. Anderson. Surprised to see me?
So now he's found a way to copy himself.
Now there's more than one of them. A lot more.
So if you take the 2 sequels as kind of a response to the first movie, there is a thematic thing that they're trying to do. I don't know if it's incredibly coherent, but they're basically throwing a lot of the stuff that happened in the first movie kind of in your face and saying, like, this is my take, okay? Like, all of the Christ imagery in the first movie, you bought Neo as the savior, as the Christ figure, as the one who is going to save everyone because you believed the prophecy. The sequels, and this one I think is the one that mainly is the gut punch, is like, that was all a trick, that was all manipulation. Anyone who buys into any kind of one man is going to save us all story is a sucker. You're all suckers, and you need to pay attention and watch out for this shit in real life. That's what they're trying to do, right? I mean, I can't see it any other way.
I think that's absolutely true. And then I think that's, looking at the trilogy, then the first movie is setting up the time-old tradition of the savior complex. The second movie is tearing that down, and then when we eventually get to the third movie will be building up what the Wachowskis actually believe, right? So the second one says, no, that's all bullshit, you guys were wrong. here's what matters. And I think we will find that I have not seen the third movie in a very long time, but there are parts of that I remember that slot into that very nicely. So yeah, I think you're spot on there, that this movie is every bit of imagery that you thought you had is ripped away. And I love that at the end of the movie when the Nebuchadnezzar explodes, Morpheus reads a Bible quote, but it's not, he changes it, right? So it's almost as if to say, you're going back to your old Bible quotes, and then, nope, that's being ripped away from you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Morpheus is just this terribly depressing character in this movie. Because he's so, okay, so one comment is that so many of the characters in this movie seem like completely different people from the first movie, which is jarring, and one of the reasons why I kind of, I don't know, I find it to be a pretty huge flaw, honestly, like that people act completely differently and inconsistently. But Morpheus, I don't know if it's fair to say he acts completely differently. It's more like we just see more depth behind why he is that way, and it makes him a lot less likable.
Yeah.
And,
well,
it more of a psycho.
Yeah, I mean, it comes off as like what was once like this wall of like assured like faith. Like, and I mean, that faith carries forward into this movie, but it's a different kind of faith. It's like an oppressive kind of faith where, like, over and over again to the new operator, whose name I'm blanking on now, I can't remember.
Link.
There you go, Link. He's just like, no, I am right. Trust me. Believe in me. Don't question anything I do because I am correct.
And he's not.
And the movie, yeah, I mean, that's what they're saying is that, no, you were not. And you put everyone in danger. You put everything in danger for faith in a thing that was wrong.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. Like, the certain scenes don't read the way I think they're meant to read. So, like, for example, where he is talking to kind of the city's military commander. First of all, like, that guy just comes off as a lot more likable, and his concerns are very relatable.
But you're absolutely right that I don't think the movie wants you to think that.
The movie doesn't really want you to think that. See, that's what I'm trying to figure out. And then Morpheus is like, more like the line where he says, not everyone believes what you believe, and Morpheus says, my beliefs do not require them to. That's like the most grating possible thing for a person to say. like, oh, like, you just don't care what other people think. That's what you're saying. That's
a good point, though, because I mean, I was listening to myself say that the movie doesn't want you to think that, but maybe it does. I mean, like, maybe they're constructing these points and filming the movie as if you're supposed to buy into all this, but secretly you're supposed to be in the back of your head going, wait a minute, is that good?
That is my current, like, the Matrix sequels are actually 8-dimensional chess, and they're actually they know that you're going to be watching this movie thinking Morpheus is awesome, and they're making him subtly actually look like an idiot in ways that make you uncomfortable, but you can't put your finger on why. And then he's finally revealed to just be wrong about everything, like really catastrophically wrong, because he's basically doomed everyone through his stupid decisions.
Yeah.
Like, if you really zoom out and look at it, it's all his fault. so yeah, like, it's.
But I think that brings to a point, and I don't want to spend this entire episode like ragging on this movie.
No.
Because I think there are actually some quite phenomenal parts of this movie that I really love. But I think one of the reasons why this movie doesn't work is because I think you're absolutely right that if we get down into like an 8-dimensional chess kind of way, this movie is about tearing Morpheus and his belief system down and kind of making him not be the cool badass guy. And then every time we cut to an action sequence, he is the cool badass guy. And that's the disconnect. The disconnect between action sequences and non-action sequences in this movie are really stark to me, more so than in the first movie by far. It feels like we pause a different movie to go into an action scene. And then we're done with our action scene. Now let's go back into that other movie we were doing. Yeah. I really felt that in this.
I think there were some action scenes. I think you may have said this to me, actually, that some of the action scenes work great and have just perfectly fine stakes, but about half of them have no stakes.
Right. And I mean, there was the fight with the Seraph at the beginning, which is like you have no idea what's going on. I want to talk about the Smiths fight in detail because I think the Smiths fight is like a perfect example of everything that's wrong with this movie. But then you have scenes like, I think the entire highway chase sequence is actually brilliant because it's changing. Like, the stakes are clearly defined and they're changing constantly. Nothing gets stale in the fight because we're switching what's happening and who's doing what and where they're trying to go and who's fighting them. It's fantastic.
And I think they deserve huge props for that because that was it still looks really good. A shocking amount of that was practical effects, and it was incredibly expensive to film, if I recall.
Yeah, they built like a giant circular highway, but they had to build it big enough to where you couldn't tell it was a circle.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It is insane that the amount of work they put in to do that. It's incredible, and it pays off. The only time I noticed the seams a little bit is when Morpheus is fighting the agent on top of the truck, and you can kind of tell it's green screened there. Like, the background doesn't quite blend the way it should. But this is a movie from 2003, so it's like 15 years ago.
Well, and that whole sequence looks great compared to other sequences within the movie.
Yes.
That's what's weird.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. Like the Smiths.
The Smiths. Well, yeah.
We have to get to it. So let's spend some time on the scene because before we get to the scene, we have to do the one before it. And I want to the talk with the Oracle, right? Because the talk with the Oracle is what sets up this fight. So one of the things I wanted to do, one of the things that I think is the most problematic with this movie is can be represented by comparing the Oracle scene in this movie to the Oracle scene in the first movie. The Oracle scene in the first movie is this kind of like weird, like you're not sure what's going on, and it's all about identity, right? And she's being coy and not telling Neo what he wants to hear, but also kind of like exactly telling him what he wants to hear, but in that Oracle kind of way. I'm thinking of the moment where she literally says, like, being the one is like being in love. No one can tell you if you are, you just know it. And then, of course, at the end of the scene, she tells him he's not the one, and he just goes, yep, I knew it. And it's like, well, no, she just told you that, like, you have to figure that out for yourself. But this Oracle scene is like almost complete nonsense. And it's just doing exposition in the most bland, boring way possible.
Yeah, you can. My perspective on watching it was like, it seems like the person who wrote the first part, the scene from The Matrix 1, wrote like the first 10 lines of that scene, and then a different person wrote the rest of the scene.
Yeah.
Like, because she, as far as I can tell, just stops being the same character and just starts explaining things in a not like her personality just disappears.
Yeah.
And it's just the actress reading the lines, trying to convey the personality, but the lines are not things that she would say, and so it's terribly jarring.
It's just, I mean, it's like, I understand it's a sequel, you have to expand the world, and I actually like the way the world is expanded in here. I like getting to see Zion. I really enjoyed the Zion scenes, actually. The sex rave was, I think, actually phenomenal. Like, it was wonderfully filmed, and the more I know about the Wachowskis, the more that it's actually completely in line with the type of stuff they like to do, especially after seeing Bound. But this scene, this expansion of the world is just her saying, yep, there are other programs here, they're exiled. That's what vampires and werewolves and ghosts are. They're actually just other programs. And then here's your plot. Here, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do. And again, Matt, maybe that's kind of the point. Maybe the whole point is that, and this is basically what the Merovingian says to him, is you don't know why you're doing these things anymore. You're just doing them because you sat down with a person, she fed you some exposition and told you, go here, get this person, they're going to lead you to the next thing. And I get that that's the point, but I think from like a dramatic sense, it makes it just flat and kind of boring.
Yeah, no, I think that what I would say is, like, this is a brilliant attempt at doing a clever thing that dramatically collapses.
Yeah.
Because it can't be both of the things. It can't succeed at kind of like both of the things it's trying to, like, it can't successfully trick you into thinking that it's a straightforward action movie, while also being this subversive thing, which it is. What's interesting to me is my reaction this time. Like the first time, I thought the Merovingian scene was terrible. The first time, meaning like when I was a kid, was just like terribly sophomoric and completely out of place in the movie. And now I view the Merovingian scene as like the spine of the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like the key to understanding the movie. And I actually don't think it's sophomoric anymore. I think hilariously, I just didn't understand what he was saying when I was younger.
Yeah, I totally agree, because he defines so many things for us. He defines the concept of cause and effect, which is like causality and choice are like the things that matter in this movie. Like as the architect literally says, it all comes down to choice. And the Oracle actually kind of says that, like, except she implies you've already made the choice, which is again like dramatically boring. Like, oh, you've already made, okay, I guess that's cool. Did we not see that part? Anyway, but yeah, the Merovingian scene, I completely agree that, and I think, 2003, I was high school still, right? Yeah, just graduating, I guess. Yeah, I completely agree that like 17-year-old Scott was like, what the fuck was that? That's just weird, and this weird orgasm cake. And it's because we weren't paying attention to what the scene was actually saying. And what the scene is actually saying is everything else around you is bullshit, and this sniveling guy who comes off as kind of an asshole is maybe the only right person in this group.
Yeah, right. And which is again like way too subversive for it to work properly, because you're like, I'm not receptive to what you're trying to do here because you've couched it the way you've couched it.
Yeah. But okay, we have to get to it. We've been kind of putting this off. We have setting the table for the Smiths fight.
Yeah, yes, we have to actually talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, thematically, I like Agent Smith's purpose in this film. It's all about purpose, right? And if you go back to the Matrix as a trans metaphor that we talked about in the last episode, I think Smith kind of fits perfectly in that, because if he is representative of the system that would not allow a person that different to exist, the idea of him after having lost to come back with a vengeance and then like get so upset about it that they try to transform everyone else on the planet to their way of thinking, is like metaphorically perfect. Like it fits so nicely into that central metaphor. I think like he is so anti what Neo has become, and that he can't live in a world unless everyone sees it his way, and therefore is literally changing everyone into himself. That's wonderful.
Yeah. He even exits the Matrix so that he can try to continue that on the other side, which is, yeah.
But what's the deal? Like this fight is one of the most inert pieces of action I've ever seen put to film. And they spent so much money on it. This was like a thing that the Wachowskis envisioned, and they had to invent new technology for it. And it's a nothing burger. It's just this big fat, like 10-minute long thing in the middle of the film that you're just like, really?
Yeah.
Are we still really? And Matt, the first thing the fight does is Smith reaches out and does his little copy paste thing on Neo, and Neo just stops it. He just stops it from happening. So within the first 5 seconds of the fight, you're like, okay, well, he can't win.
Yeah.
Like, he can't, like, Neo's gonna win. It doesn't matter how many so from every point from then, it's just people hitting each other and nothing happening.
Yeah. There's also, it's a very common thing to see in like superhero movies or anime, where if the person, if the filmmakers don't understand the concept of having to keep the power levels scaled in a reasonable way, then, so like, for example, in the first movie, you knew that Neo could be harmed by things of a similar order to what would harm a normal person.
Yeah.
If he gets hit by a train, he'll die. If he gets shot, he'll die. And you also knew that actually, you didn't actually know this, but the movie like correctly leads you to think if Smith gets hit by a train or if Smith gets shot, his body will die, but he'll just switch to a new body. And like, for example, the train fight, in the first movie was actually much more about Neo just being willing to stand up to him than like, is he going to kill Smith? Because he does kill him and it doesn't matter. But the point is the win for morale, basically.
Right.
And you care, and you still care about that, which is the cool part.
Yeah, I mean, that's the stake of that fight, right? Like, he's not actually going to be able to kill this guy. It doesn't matter. The stakes are, what does this mean internally? They're internalized, and that is where stakes are good, when they're internalized. And
those certainly don't exist in this fight. And not only that, but you don't understand the external stakes of Neo doesn't appear to be injured at all when he is hit. And he appears to be able to hit Smith with a pole hard enough to send him like flying into the air, which would kill a normal person. But so it's basically just like, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
I'm seeing nothing happening on the screen, even though it's an amazingly actionful fight. It's so yes, we could rag on how shitty the fight was for a while, but I think what's like, it's more of a like, how did this happen? And what were they trying to do with this? And what it like, was this just one of the few places where their ambitions outstripped the capabilities? Because these women understand stakes.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know. I think like from a technical standpoint, yes, their vision outstripped their ability, because I think the CG in this is not good. It does not hold up. It's very plastic and weightless. But yeah, I mean, from a storytelling perspective, from a narrative of what you're trying to do perspective, I sat with this for a while and I was like, what are you trying to say with this? And I couldn't get there. I mean, obviously there's the idea that slots into this identity metaphor, that he's literally being attacked from all direction and people are piling on him and he can hit them as many times as he wants, but it's just going to keep coming, is central to kind of like all the themes of the story. I think that you can't defeat this thing by fighting, right?
Yeah, that I did get that much, where it was like, okay, so the point of this scene is that actually the punching is pointless.
Right.
We're moving into a part of the story where punching is pointless. And it's almost like you take all of the things that make you uncomfortable and annoyed in the movie, and you just literally look at them and you're like, this is a disappointing twist. What is this trying to tell me? Oh, it's trying to tell me that this is a disappointing twist.
Right.
And that's what the movie is doing. Like, yeah, so it's
which I mean, I want to, like, that's such a fun idea, and I kind of love it as an idea, but yeah, it just kind of makes everything just a little flat. Mm-hmm. And I mean, part of me also kind of understands that they almost wrote themselves into a corner, because the Matrix ends with Neo basically as this all-powerful god, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he stops bullets, and like, this is where I talk about where it feels to me like different people wrote this movie, because to me, he didn't stop bullets because he had a new stop bullet skill. He stopped bullets because he was so powerful that he could manipulate time and space within the Matrix. Mm-hmm. Like, that's to me what I think the scene when like you see the walls of the hallway kind of bend and flex around him. Like, he controls every bit of everything in this place. Mm-hmm. That was my reading on it, right?
Yes, right. And he can fly, just demonstrating the setup was, that when he learns how, he won't even need to obey gravity anymore, or whatever.
Right.
I forget the exact line.
I think it was like that the rules of physics can be bent.
Some can be broken. And,
some can be broken, but he's like, it's not just breaking them anymore. It's just they're irrelevant. So I understand you get into a sequel in an action movie, and one of your characters is God. Mm-hmm. So what do? Their first response was, the first agency fights, he goes, upgrades. And you're just like, okay, but he can stop things. Like, if he can stop a bullet, he can stop their punch from, and that continues throughout the entire movie, to the point where like, in the scene when he's fighting the werewolves and the vampires and the ghosts and what have you, where he does the stop the bullet thing again, this time with a bunch of guns. And I'm just looking at this scene like, if someone told me someone other than the Wachowskis wrote the scene, I would say, yeah, because they didn't get why the stopping bullets thing was significant. It's just become a tool in the arsenal. He stops 300 bullets and then goes to hand-to-hand combat.
Right.
And you're just like, but
Yeah.
he's the one.
Yeah, right. I mean, this could have been fixed pretty easily, I think, but they didn't go that route.
Well, what it does is surprisingly, their solution for it was to remove Neo from a lot of the action scenes, right? Like he's off on his own fighting different people while the characters that we know are still capable of being defeated, and therefore characters we worry about are actually doing all the fighting.
Which are the only good action scenes, actually.
Yes, consequently, they are,
and
yeah.
It is a bit, I don't know, not well written, that there are two different scenes where he has to fly in and grab someone in the nick of time.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you're just like, you know what? You get one ticking clock with like 1 second to spare per movie, but not like 3, which this movie has.
Yeah.
So.
And that gets us. We got to talk about the architect scene. I think we can't talk about this movie without talking about the second exposition dump of the scene from the other creator of The Matrix that explains everything. And I am much more apologetic to this one because, first of all, you're right. It's a new character, so we don't have a character contradicting who they were in the last movie. Plus, they're just like such a deliciously asshole-ish character that I think it makes the exposition a lot more entertaining. Like the architect, just the way he talks. Like I think Will Ferrell made fun of the ergo concordantly vis-a-vis stuff, but it really is to the levels of absurdity. Like where he uses words, like he forms sentences in this ridiculous, like totally grammatically correct, but computerized way of forming sentences, right?
Yeah. Well, and like you said, it's actually pretty. I don't mind it at all because it's like he's so disdainful of the fact that he has to talk to this human that he's just going to condescend to them, and he could probably speak in a perfectly normal way if he wanted to, but he's just like, I'm going to make it obvious that I'm smarter than you. Right.
And the scene, I mean, it's such a famous scene because I think directorial wise, the decision making in the scene was wonderful. Having the TVs with Keanu Reeves in the background, and then the movie does this thing where it like as the TV Keanu's are freaking out, it like zooms in on one of them and transforms that into his scene, kind of showing like, I mean, it shows how powerless he is in this whole thing at this point.
Yeah, right. I always liked that touch, and I always wondered if it meant more than just a visual affectation, if it was supposed to be like, these are all kind of the architect's kind of windows into his mind and what he's thinking, because he consistently is completely cold and almost Neo is consistently cold and almost affectless throughout the scene. But you see the turmoil that he's feeling on the monitors. So I thought that was a nice way of showing that.
Yeah.
Because he gets very few opportunities in this movie to actually emote, but the movie actually hinges on the fact that he's extremely conflicted. I think that actually does work. So I like that trick.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. But I think the weirdest part of this for me is, so he's given this fundamental choice, right? The choice is save Trinity or save the world, basically. Or save humanity, rather.
Right.
And I feel like, I mean, it kind of goes back to what the Oracle said about how you've already made the choice, you just have to understand it. And because he makes the drama around the decision that he makes is rather rushed over, I think. Like he just does it like automatically. It's just like, which, I mean, fair. I think we knew that Neo was always going to do that, but like we take so long to really dive into the consequences of that. It's not until they're back on the ship and the quote unquote real world and we're seeing Morpheus just ripped apart because he realizes the truth. But I don't know. It just felt like this is probably the key moment of the film. If it's all about choice, I just felt like the choosing itself felt a little dramatically meh to me.
Yeah, and I think that calls back to what you mentioned earlier, where the Oracle told him he'd already made the choice,
right?
Which I think is true. Like he you're exactly right that he never could have made an opposite choice, which means precisely that there's no drama to that scene. It's just, oh yeah, he's going to go save. Well, what's funny is he's going to go save Trinity, but actually the way the architect framed it, it's like, actually you're going to save her for like 10 minutes and then everyone's going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So,
which is completely irrational and illogical, but that's being human. That's I mean, like, one of the things that the movie I think is also doing is really defining stark differences between being human and being these machines. What that means, what being human actually means, and it means making a completely irrational decision just because you are in love. Yeah. But so I mean, he failed I don't, in the line of this is all just another form of control, that means that the machines failed as well. And maybe, I mean, this starts getting into the third movie stuff, but
it's implied that the Oracle set it up, right?
Yeah. Well, that was like the weird, there was that one moment where he's explaining who the Oracle is, right? Like he's saying, if I am the father of the Matrix, then she would undoubtedly be its mother. And Neo says, the Oracle? And his response, the architect's response is, please. And I didn't get what that meant. Like,
yeah.
Is he saying, no, it's not the Oracle? Or is he saying just her name is absurd and ridiculous? I mean, that's kind of what I thought it was.
Yeah. I think that my most likely interpretation is that he thought that was silly. I almost wonder if he was just like, is he trying to like chastise Neo for interrupting him?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Or just like, it's so obvious that you shouldn't even have to say it, and you're an idiot for having to say it.
Yeah.
Which is yet again him condescending to Neo. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be the Oracle. I mean, I think we find out that it was in the next movie.
Yeah, we definitively find that out in the next movie. That's why it jumped out as weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about all this bad stuff, Matt, but why did this happen? That's really what I kind of want to see if we can get to the bottom of here is I frequently love these women's stories. I think they tell pretty tight stories. The first two movies we've seen as definitive examples of that. These are tight scripts that know what they're doing, have focus and direction, and we have clear characters with clear stakes throughout, and we're there for the journey. And this just seemed like, and I think the simplest answer is what you said earlier, which is that their vision exceeded the possible. They wanted to do too much. There was too many ideas they had, and that the studio basically just gave them like carte blanche here, that they could do whatever they wanted because the Matrix did so well and was such a hit that they could do whatever they wanted, and they had all these ideas, and they just wanted to use them all, and they did. They used them all.
Yeah, I think that there was a lack of this, like they succeeded too hard, and there was a lack of discipline required to rein in some of that. Like we've talked about some of the like long philosophy discussion scenes, and now I don't mind the discussion with the Merovingian, and I don't mind the discussion with the architect because they work with the movie.
Yeah.
But the long discussion with the Oracle, I don't feel served any purpose and could have been left out. And same goes actually for the long discussion with like the mayor of Zion, whatever his position was.
The counselor. The
counselor. And that's the thing is, like, that could have worked, but it just was actually very boring. That
conversation is fascinating to me in its almost pointlessness, because I watched it like 3 times actually, because I was just fascinated. I was like, his whole idea is that we kind of have this almost symbiotic relationship, right? Like humans need machines, machines need humans, and Neo goes ahead and says that, and then the chairman's like, no, I actually don't have a point in this at all, and you're like, oh, okay. So that's it then.
Yeah, I distinctly remember watching that in theaters when I was a kid and just being like, what?
Yeah.
Like, why would you put this? in the movie, and this is the Matrix sequel.
But this is like, I think a lot of the scenes, even the scenes that I don't like so much, I think still kind of drill down to what the main point of this story is, which is this idea of choice, this idea of, I think Morpheus actually represents the opposite of choice, right? Because he is a person that believes so fervently that choice doesn't matter to him, that it's just you're gonna do. I like the moment where they get into the elevator after they had their talk with the Merovingian, and he's like, no, everything happened exactly how it was supposed to and no other way. And they're like, well, then what do we do now? And then the elevator opens, and his wife's sitting there, and it's like, oh, look, there's our answer, just gift wrapped to us. But that's only in service of something that they didn't think it was. So it's choice versus destiny and faith and predestination, right?
Yeah.
But most scenes fit into that, even the ones I don't like. But that counselor scene doesn't really.
Yeah. It's like a secondary theme that is being, in my opinion, quite ham-handedly shoved in your face of like, you know what, in the next movie and a little bit in this movie, we're going to indicate that you have misunderstood the nature of the machine world.
Yeah.
And that actually the machines are people basically worthy of your empathy. You kind of come to understand that some of the machines are more people-like in this movie, but because you learn the Oracle's a machine, you meet Seraph, you meet the Merovingian and his wife and his henchmen. You don't necessarily like any of them too much. The next movie, you kind of meet a couple that you like, and you realize like, hey, this is a whole like civilization, and there's kind of like they depend on each other, and some of them might even regret that the Matrix has to be the way it is, but that's the way it is, and
yeah,
it's like, oh, this is just kind of an unfortunate way that things have evolved, and maybe no one's even happy with it, but having a 12-minute conversation about how they rely on an oxygen purification system is the worst possible way of like raising that theme as a, you could have done. I mean, like we could probably sit here and figure out like a much more graceful way to, you know, just like show Neo looking at the machines with like an expression of conflict, and maybe introduce one or two AI characters who we actually like, and drop some hints as to like, oh, you know, I have a whole other life back on the server or whatever, you know. I don't know. I don't know, but like it's just, I mean, like, it feels to me more anime-y, right? I mean, like, I know what you mean.
It's plot through exposition and then an action sequence and then plot through exposition. And I really don't think the first movie followed that formula. I think the first movie, so much of the movie is about identity, is about self, about who you are. And that is told through the conflict, through Neo kind of trying to figure out who Neo is, who the one is. Everyone's telling me I'm this thing I don't know, and I'm struggling to figure it out. And throughout the story, his choices and his actions reflect this search for self, and none of that is in this movie. None of the actions reflect the central conflict and theme of the movie. It's just, we're gonna have some smart programs / people tell you what they are.
Yeah. So you just said an interesting comment about the nature of the exposition, and so I think this is definitely a worthy thing to talk about in a conversation about them as directors, because there was actually a lot of exposition in The Matrix, but it was always wrapped in a scene that made it not feel like exposition. Like, right. I can name for you, Morpheus is telling him about the nature of the Matrix as they're walking through that crowd, and then it transforms, and you realize they're not actually in the Matrix; they're actually in a simulation still.
Yeah.
And the woman in the red dress and all that. That's exposition. The scene where they're fighting is, see, that's the thing, is it's not really exposition. It's, he's teaching him a lesson through the fight, but he's also telling him things. There's the scene where Agent Smith has Morpheus captured, and he's telling him about what his existence is like, and his opinions on the Matrix. That's like the most riveting scene of the movie, and it's sort of exposition. So the thing is, yeah, it's like they forgot that they had to couch all of those things in an interesting package with conflict and stakes built into it.
Yeah, and it's like we use exposition as kind of a dirty word, right? But it's a necessary part of storytelling. You have to explain things to people. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
The challenge with it is putting it in a package that doesn't seem like you're just being told a checklist of the things about this world or the conflict or the people. And I agree that the first movie, while it had a lot of exposition, succeeded in that. It put that in a nice, shiny, interesting package that was visually fascinating, was really great to see that exposition told to you. And this movie did not do that. Even the scenes, like, they tried to do it, I think, a little bit with the architect, right? The architect scenes feels like almost a recreation of the Morpheus scene from the first movie. It's just a new person of authority recontextualizing your entire worldview. And it's kind of set up a similar way. It's a white room. There's TVs around. It's just this time he has more of them than just the one TV. But yeah, I guess because maybe it all has to come down to the idea that the reveal is so much more disappointing than it is interesting. And maybe that's why the exposition doesn't work as well, because the thing that you're being exposited to is just inherently less interesting because it's designed to be. You're basically telling everyone all the cool shit of the world as you know it is all bullshit, and you're actually just in like a second Matrix. Even the people freed from the Matrix are still in the Matrix.
Basically, yeah. Not literally, but figuratively. Yeah. So the thing is, I think that this still could have been great if they had actually like dramatized the character of Neo. Like, think about the fact that there is an interpretation where the reason he storms out of the architect's office is like 50% because he's like, if you give me this choice, I'm going to choose to save Trinity.
Right.
But the other 50% is like, you know what? I'm Neo, the hacker who doesn't listen to anyone. The last time I listened to someone who told me the way things were, it was Morpheus, and he was clearly wrong. I'm just now learning.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna listen to you're offering me this choice. I'm just gonna reject your choice because you're obviously just offering me, you're trying to manipulate me into making the choice you want me to make by sketching the situation the way you want me to see it, and I'm sick of that. I'm sick of people trying to control the way I see the world and tricking me into make the choices they want me to make. And so like that to me is a more interesting reason to go save Trinity. But like you don't actually know Neo. Like you don't know what's going on in his head. You don't understand him as a character at this point in the movie. You don't understand Trinity either, for that matter.
Yeah, Neo is so cold and reserved in this movie. You never see how he is feeling about any of this. This is supposedly 6 months after he has come out as the one. He saved a bunch of people. We get told they've saved more people in 6 months than they have saved in 6 years. We see these people basically worshiping him as a god. And his response to it all is just cold uncertainty, right? He doesn't feel like he deserves this. He doesn't feel like... But he also fully believes who he is. And I think what you just said is there in the movie somewhere. It is just so unsufficiently dramatized that you don't feel any of it.
Yes, exactly. Like you have to have a protagonist who you can at least like understand the emotions of. And if we understood Neo's emotions or even Trinity's, like it would have been an interesting twist to kind of make Morpheus the main character of this movie and Trinity the main character of the next movie. But as it is, there's just no protagonist.
Yeah.
Like Agent Smith is the closest thing to a protagonist.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting when you look at the two-door choice as a reflection of the red pill, blue pill choice, right? And we try to drill down which pill did he choose in that case. Because it seems to me that he chose the red pill again, kind of, right? Because taking the door where you're basically admitting that this is all another form of control, and you are reinserting yourself in the system. If you say yes, I will return to the source, I'll pick 23 people. Is it implied that of those 23 people, Neo is one of them? Like, he gets to survive still? I was unclear on that.
Yeah, I think it is, because which actually, like, this is one of the kind of like messed up things that I actually like is that Morpheus tells him, you know, the one was in the first movie, he tells him the one was the first man to escape from the Matrix. He freed the first of us.
Yeah.
And that means that guy betrayed all of his comrades and let them die, and then saved 23 people and told them that he was their savior.
Right.
Which is completely screwed up, and an amazing like subversion. Like, this is the one, like, the most successful subversion of the first movie, because you're just like, oh my god, like that's such a screwed up thing.
Well, and you realize that the prophecy, the origin of the prophecy itself, which we thought was just the Oracle, was probably begun by the last one, right?
Yeah, just trying to perpetuate it, because he understood that either we're all going to die or I keep this charade going, and at least there's some light in the world. Yeah.
And so this rejection of this is him once again separating himself from the system and saying, like you said, he's saying, no, I'm not going to be part of that. And the movie posits that the reason for that is because he's in love. But maybe it's just because I don't think their relationship works that I don't buy that. But, like, I don't know. I'm not even sure what to say. Like, I think you're absolutely right that the drama behind the choice and behind doing what he did just wasn't there. And I don't think these movies know what to do with Neo after he became the one. Like, action wise, character wise, I don't think the Wachowskis really were clear on what they wanted to do with him.
Yeah.
And he becomes more and more detached, more and more cold, less and less human. And they almost try to make it a point that's happening. Like, the only thing in the fight with the Chancellor that I thought was interesting when he says it's good that you're still having dreams because it shows that you're still human somewhere in there. I thought that was really fascinating, but that's barely touched on. Like, his coldness and, like, kind of losing his humanity is, like, barely touched on. At least in this movie. I think it kind of, the third movie, if I'm remembering correctly, goes into that a little more.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because I don't want to rag on Keanu Reeves as an actor. I think we already talked about how he's great.
Yeah.
But it's almost as if in this movie he's being told like his notes are like, be as minimally emotive as you possibly can get away with. Like in this scene, you're going to notice the baskets of food that they've left you, and you're really uncomfortable about the fact that they worship you like this. But we want it to be barely detectable that you feel anything about it. Like that's the whole movie, and it's like, that's not. I mean, you can have a character like that, but it doesn't work very well in film. Yeah,
I mean, I guess the trick is we got to see what's going on inside that head. And the movie keeps us at arm's length from that at all times. The only time the movie stops and shows us what's going on inside Neo's head is when he's dreaming about Trinity's death. That's it. So we see that it seems like from inside his head, his only driving concern throughout all this is Trinity is going to die. And that's an understandable one, right? I mean, that's like, but it makes you kind of a cold character. Like, it's kind of, oh god, I'm going to compare it to the prequels, Matt. It's kind of Anakin going bad a little bit, but I don't know if it's supposed to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I almost made the prequels comparison a bit ago when I was talking about how the exposition was handled differently, because this movie basically is shot reverse shot. Yeah. In its exposition, whereas the other movie, even for analogous scenes, it embedded them in much more interesting systems. And I'll make yet another prequel comparison, which I was on the verge of making, which was like, you know, George Lucas got like his yellow legal pad and wrote the draft of the prequels, and there was now no longer anyone around who had any authority over him, and so they just like made the movie that he wrote, and like that was that was the problem. So like here, I feel like the Wachowskis sat down. They probably put a huge amount of energy into it. They probably had all of these subversive ideas in mind. Where we're gonna invert everything in the first movie. It's gonna be shocking. We're probably gonna make people mad, but we're gonna at least entertain them, and it's gonna, they'll probably get it immediately because the first Matrix is, after all, about about rejecting authority. So this all makes perfect thematic sense, and like I'm 100% certain they had all this in their mind, but then they wrote it, and it didn't really work, but nobody could stop them, and then they had like hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on like a deadline, and they were like, I guess we just have to make this script. I kind of feel like that happens a lot. Yeah, I feel like this. We've talked about this phenomenon before with other movies where I feel like you hand somebody a huge pile of money and a deadline, and then they just make the movie that they have a script ready for, even if it doesn't work.
Well, and by very nature, the first movie in something has such a longer time to cook. We've talked about this before, that someone works on a script. I'm not sure exactly how long they worked on the Matrix script, but they definitely had a much less of a deadline because no one was waiting for the Matrix movie to come out. They were just trying to sell a script to studios. So you have this thing that you've worked on, and like I think we talked about this with Blomkamp, that he had this thing that he worked on forever and nurtured and spent time with and fixed and corrected and went through so many drafts, and this thing becomes a hit, and then they turn around and go, okay, now what? What do you got next?
Yeah,
we need
do it again.
We need to follow up to the Matrix. Write a script. We need it in about 6 months because we got to start filming. We got to start pre-production really soon because it's probably going to be pretty expensive. Go. And
you're gonna have to release some video games and anime sequences and then whatever you end up with is gonna have to cohere with those perfectly.
So I mean that's not to sell the Wachowskis short at all. I mean I'm sure they poured their hearts into this thing. And I think to me it still shows. To me, like even their movies that I think misstep, and I think we're going to talk about a few of them before this marathon is over. Their heart always seems to be really in it. They are so into defining this weird world and telling this weird story. But yeah, I mean sometimes it doesn't work, and I really I don't think this is a bad movie. I don't think it belongs on Entertainment Weekly's top 25 worst sequels ever. That's kind of ridiculous, but I do have a tough time seeing the through line from the last two movies to this one.
Yeah, I think a lot of what's wrong with the movie could be improved by cutting scenes, which tells you that it has like good bones.
Right.
It has like the themes. Okay, it couldn't be, in my opinion, it couldn't be like saved by cutting things because there's still the issue of lack of like character clarity in terms of what's going on with the characters. But you could definitely improve it by cutting a lot of the, I don't know, just the beginning of the movie is very slow and there's a lot of fights that make no sense and don't mean anything.
I do think you're right that the skeleton of this is a good one. I love the central idea at the heart of this movie. I love the expanded world building. I love the idea that ghosts are just like asshole programs fucking with people. That's hilarious to me. And I love how that's reflected in the world. The two twin characters are really great. There's so many good ideas in this movie. There's so many scenes that are great. We didn't talk about the highway chase in a lot of detail, but it's fantastic filmmaking. It really is. I mean, it's this extended long sequence that just works on every level. It just really, really does work. There's so much that I think they did wrong here, and it hurts the movie, and you understand why this was such a disappointment to people. Part of it is because it was designed to be a disappointment. I think you're right on that. I think that original kernel of an idea you had at the start of the episode is absolutely spot on, but I don't think that's the entire problem with the film.
Yeah, right. I mean, as I said, I think that if you cared about the character and were with him and them, all of the characters, then you could deal with your disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, they could even be feeling that disappointment, and you're with them in that disappointment, and thus the movie works.
Yeah, I mean, there are stories that end disappointingly, right? That happens all the time. But it's a good, if you're there with the characters, that disappointment, you're much more able to handle the disappointment in the world of the story if you are emotionally connected to the characters. And I just don't feel like you are. And I think it's a little bit of what I think some people felt at The Last Jedi, where it kind of felt like it was just shitting on the movies that came before it. What I'm assuming people thought was for no reason. I don't think The Last Jedi was doing it for no reason. I don't think this film is doing it for no reason either, but I can see why people would think that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, like, and that's the phrasing people use, right? Like, it's shitting on the other thing. And
right.
And I'm sure, like, it's viscerally, you're like, oh, this movie's shitting on the Matrix. But it's like, no, this is taking the Matrix, the message of the Matrix, and then, if anything, extending the message. Yeah. It's not refuting it. It's like, you are not being sufficiently distrustful of authority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
authority is not so easily shucked, right? Like Victory's self-identity, like finding who you are and what you are supposed to be. Like the system of control and authority in our world does not give up that easily. You don't get to you don't have this eureka moment and you're just like, I am me now. This is me. And then the world just says, oh, okay. Like, no, the world tries to buck back against that. The world tries to fit that into another realm of control. And that's what I think this movie is saying.
Yeah. To extend the trans metaphor, like you were saying, it's just by claiming your identity, you're now in the next level of the battle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the war is far from over. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will finish that war in the final film of the trilogy. I always get the name of it wrong. Is it Revelations or Revolutions? Because I was like, I always want to say Revelations because I'm like, oh, it's like the Bible metaphor, but it's not Revelations. It's Revolutions. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, it's a strange title because you think it would be like Revolution, but it's Revolutions, which I suppose
it's like a circle.
Yeah, well, I suppose being Revolutions refers to there's a revolution in both the machine world and the human world. I guess we can talk about that.
Yeah, we will get there. Yeah,
yeah.
But that was The Matrix, Reloaded, not The Matrix.
Yeah.
I can't wait to finish this trilogy. We're gonna come back. I'm not sure exactly when we're gonna come back with the 4th episode of this marathon and finish The Matrix, but it'll be in the future.
Yes. The future.
All right, let's talk about another sequel that disappointed the shit out of me, Matt.
Yes, please do. And I'm so sad to hear this because I wanted to see this movie.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about The Predator because this is a movie that you and I had been looking forward to for a while. We both are known Shane Black lovers. I think we did a deconstructing series on Shane Black, if I'm remembering correctly. And man, I love all those movies. And I like The Predator generally. I think the first movie is so much fun. Yeah. Oh man, this is a mess of a movie, Matt. This is I think I walked out of the movie. The word I used was a disaster, and I really think it is an absolute disaster. It's hard to get down to exactly why. The thing I can think of is the studio hired Shane Black to make a Predator movie, and then they didn't like when Shane Black made a Predator movie that was a Shane Black movie. And so the movie feels like it's been chopped up and Frankenstein back together. There's very little sense of flow. Scenes just kind of start and end, and you kind of feel like, there was probably like an establishing part of the scene that got cut because this feels really weird. Like the pace is all over the place. It's a fucking mess. Like there are moments where you can see what Shane Black was trying to do. There's a group of characters that are all like the kind of crazy washed out army people that are kind of our group of heroes that Shane Black always puts like non-traditional heroes in his movies, right? And all those characters are in here, and they're funny and they tell inappropriate jokes and they're pretty great, but the scaffolding that all these characters are on is so shoddily built that you're just kind of like what is going on? You're being flung from scene to scene. And then you get to the third act, and the movie just goes fucking insane. The third act of this movie, I don't know what they were like. Poor Shane Black. I don't want to like, but I don't want to like give him an out too, because I think some of this is his sensibility bucking with the studio, but some of this is just his directorial choices, and it's a bad job, guy. Like, this is probably the worst Shane Black movie I've ever seen. And the weird thing is, I still have, like, there are moments of it that are really fun. Like, there are really genuine moments of fun sprinkled through this movie. But everything around it is so nonsensical and bad. I was sitting in the theater, like, baffled.
So is there any chance that, as someone who has watched and enjoyed, like, even, like, Alien versus Predator movies, that I would be able to tolerate the stupid parts, or is it just not even fun?
I think if you turn the story analytical part of your brain off and watch this on like a Saturday morning while you're like folding laundry, you'll enjoy some of it. I really do think the misfit characters are pretty good.
That's such a mean thing. That's like the meanest thing about a movie that you could say. I love it.
Some of the misfit characters are good. I mean, it's appropriately brutal and violent in the places it needs to be appropriately brutal and violent, but it's just so... I can't get into any more without spoiling some of it, but it's just a fucking mess. It really is. I've talked to people that actually enjoyed it, and I understand why they've enjoyed it, but they caveat all their enjoyment with, yeah, I mean, the movie's a mess, but I liked this, and this.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that there will be nothing you could get out of it, but
okay.
Don't go see it in a theater. Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess we have to mention, like, my instinct when talking about stuff that's in the news regarding the Me Too movement is to kind of just not bring it up because we're a couple of dudes. And it doesn't feel like our place, but I feel like maybe that's not a great instinct because that's what happen. That's what people do, and that's why stuff happens. So the one thing in the news was he hired his old friend who was actually a sex predator who had a relationship with like a 14-year-old girl that he pled guilty to and went to prison for, and then he was hired on in this movie because he was Shane Black's friend and was in a scene with Olivia Munn. And once Olivia Munn found out that he was on a sex watch list, she informed the studio and they cut the scene, and there was a whole big blowout over this. I think I can safely say that Shane Black should have told the production company, especially if he's going to be in a scene with the only female actress in the story. I can say that the scene... it is very obvious that they chopped that scene up because it's the most awkward introductory part of a scene ever because the introduction of the scene was cut. I am disappointed in how Shane Black handled the situation. I'm disappointed in how the cast handled Olivia Munn. Apparently the cast like canceled when the movie premiered at Toronto Film Festival, and the rest of the cast like canceled appearances and kind of left Olivia Munn out to dry. Like they weren't supporting her for coming out and saying this stuff, and I think that's kind of bullshit. I don't want to get into the complicated nature of what this guy did and stuff, but I absolutely think if you're going to hire someone with that kind of history to be on your set, especially when there's a little boy on set, the studio should probably know. That was a mess up, bad Shane Black, bad. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I just didn't want to feel like we were intentionally ignoring it because it made us uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, it just seems like the kind of due diligence that you would be obligated to do as basically the CEO of the movie.
Yeah, the studio claims that there are rules to say they can't do background checks on actors, and I guess there's a certain amount of sense there in that probably most like big name actors would fail a background check, but it seems to me like there should at least be some level of due diligence on people.
Yeah,
like
or maybe it's a union thing that prevents them.
Yeah, it's probably a SAG thing, right? Like I'm sure it's a Screen Actors Guild have a rule for some reason. But man, I feel like if you're on a sex offenders list, that should like if you you are required to, like, all your neighbors, when you move into a neighborhood, get like pamphlets with your picture in them. Like, so if you're going to be working on a movie, feels like the rest of the crew should be told. That's like, just seems like common sense to me. And so,
yeah, or at least the people in charge, so they can make the decision.
Right.
But yeah, that's obviously bad call.
Yeah, but the movie's not good anyway. So you pissed off a bunch of people, Shane Black, for your shitty movie. Good job.
Yeah.
I want to go watch The Nice Guys again, because that is one of the best movies I've seen in the last decade, and I still think Shane Black is a really talented writer and director. I do think this is the result of some studio meddling, and they meddled in the wrong things, ironically. They should have meddled in the cast, not the direction of the film. But, oh, Matt, I'm looking forward to the day you see this movie, so you can tell me what you thought of it.
Well, I'm going to be honest, Scott, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to go see it in theater, because this is exactly the kind of schlock that I sort of can't resist, even if I know, like, now that you've calibrated my expectations, there's actually a really good chance that I'm going to have a fun time.
That's fair. Yeah. Like, I think Predator 2 is a ridiculous movie, but I liked it.
Yeah. Well, that's like a perfect, like, late 80s movie.
Yeah.
Or I don't know when it was actually made, but yeah, like, it's exactly what it should be.
Yeah.
But it sounds like this is just poorly done.
This is trying to do that 80s movie, like 80s, like, dude movie with, like, modern blockbuster sensibilities kind of grafted onto it, and the result is a gross amalgamation mess, basically.
Okay, well, I'm excited. Can't wait.
So that's The Predator. Sorry, guys. It was a pretty negative week this week, man.
Yeah, well.
We love things.
We love things. We love talking about how things could be better, though, sometimes.
All right, guys, that's all we had for you this week. If you have any opinions on The Predator or The Matrix Reloaded, feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter at doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
You can find this and all of our other shows over at doofmedia.com. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help make sure we keep making these amazing shows where we're mean to movies that are bad.
And also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, guys, I do not think there's going to be a new episode next week. Both Matt and I are out of town, so we do not have time to record it. We were hoping to fit that in before we had to leave, but it just didn't work out. But we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode, hopefully talking about Mr. Robot. Hopefully. Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, guys, see you then.
Bye.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.